Thank you very much for the introduction, Oleg. Right, my name is Moritz. I'm a community manager at FunPlus. I think you saw the introduction. Thank you very much for attending. I will talk about feedback loops today, since it's a pretty big part of my job, and I will just jump right into it. So I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction, the briefest of introductions. Then I will talk about community feedback, what it is, why it's important, and where we get it. I will talk about something I call professionalizing feedback. Don't worry about that word. I will explain later in detail. And then I will also mention a few of the key challenges in order to have a nice Q&A session to talk about the job a bit more. So just for a brief introduction, what a CM does depends on the interpretation of the role, the size of the team, and the size of the company as well. And I won't go into all details about it today, but if you're interested in it, I would highly suggest that you check out the talk from my colleague Lise from last year, from this very job fair. And there, as the title implies, you can learn everything you ever wanted to know about community management. A great talk, and if you're interested in becoming a CM, you should check that out. But for today, I want to talk about community feedback. Now, why did I pick this? First of all, as I said, it's a pretty big part of a CM's job in a gaming company. And also because I feel like we all have sort of a basic idea about what feedback is. But there's actually a lot more when you look at it from the inside. And I want to explain a bit on that. So first of all, when you put a live project out there, a game in our case, it's quite natural that players will get back to you and tell you what they like and most prominently what they don't like, right? The nature of feedback, it's normally that it's, I don't want to say negative, but it's focused on improving the game and the product, which is actually what we want to do. So that's why we highly value it. Now, why is it important? Not only because you're always aiming to make your game better, right? I think that's quite straightforward, but also because it can have a real impact on the success of your product. I think we saw a great, great example of that last year in Baldur's Gate. They took their time really to have an open beta version, 3 years, and they implemented a lot of community feedback. Something, for example, that was a prime example was that people asked a lot about character diversity and representation. They put a lot of like very good feedback into this, and the news spread by themselves, right? They didn't even have to publish anymore. People start writing articles, people start filming themselves playing because they're so happy being part of the development cycle and that their feedback is implemented, and they really become ambassadors of your game. And there's a ton of articles out there that you can read about this, the power of player feedback, that will explain what the power is from behind. So this is when you look at it from the outside, right? From a player perspective. But when you switch the perspective and you get to the inside of a company, it's also super valuable because a lot of game insight is gathered by game data, right? And our colleagues from data science, they're doing a great job, an amazing job. You can measure almost everything nowadays, and community feedback could never even reach that scale, right? Um, However, when you only have numbers, you have a ton of quantitative feedback, but you don't really have any quality feedback, right? So you can build hypotheses, you connect player data to behavior, to cause and effect, but it can lead to misassumptions and blind spots sometimes. And community feedback can put a magnifying glass on it, which is why I picked this icon with the fancy magnifying glass next to the graphs. So let's say you already have some data, you have some numbers, you have user behavior, but you're not exactly sure about if your cause and effect relation is right. This is where community feedback can really um, get you a comprehensive answer on what is happening, right? And I think in the end, the two of them should complement each other, as the shaking hands emoji brilliantly implies. And best case, your data scientists and your community team even brief each other on user numbers and quality feedback, and you will have a perfect view, a perfect overview over your player base and insights into what your players like and don't like. Um, how do you find community feedback? There's obviously a bunch of different channels out there, and I just listed the ones that we use a lot. There are more out there, and I will also get to that in a minute. But for us, I chose Discord first, honestly, just because it's my favorite. But it's also a super good platform, especially for early stages of a game. So when you have a new game and you have a group of core players, this is where you're going to find them. 10 out of 10. They're going to be on Discord. They're committed to the game. They will use their personal account to get on your game's Discord server. They will leave quality feedback, and they will also ask you a bunch of gameplay questions, and you have to annoy your developers to provide answers. And also there's like features on Discord that will help you a lot. Like, let's say you find a good piece of feedback, you tell your dev team about it, and then they ask you, okay, that's cool, but is this actually just a single player's opinion, or is it a general sentiment? And you get back on the server and you let people give an upvote or downvote, right? Or you start a poll or something. And you have a way of quantifying quality feedback, which is great. It's a big part of our job, really. Then you have more like mainstream social media. It's a bit different in its dynamics because people are a bit less committed normally. They might see one of your posts where they're scrolling through their feed, right? They give you spontaneous feedback. It's more fragmented, and you have to sort of put in a bit more work to transform it into something complete and constructive that you put on a feedback report. And oftentimes it's also because you're specifically asking, what are your thoughts? And then you get a comment and a piece of feedback. And it's a bit more difficult to establish a two-way conversation because it might vanish in a bunch of comments and these things. Now, YouTube videos can be something special if they are in sort of a review or a video essay from an active player, a well-respected player, maybe even an opinion leader, then you can really get a lot of insights from these about your community. There's the game chat, of course. As a CM, you play the game. It's part of our job. And part of playing is also to observe the chat, because there you get spontaneous reactions about the game. You can even check if the target audience that your colleagues told you about is actually present on there, which is very interesting. But also you gain insights from players that are playing a lot, but they might not be following your social media channels, or they might not be members of your Discord. So you just let the chat go on organically. You just observe. The only thing that's a bit tedious is that you have to screenshot everything yourself and type it out, because you can't get in there and say, hey, by the way, I'm a community manager for the company. Can I use your feedback? And please don't tell anyone and burn my base, you know? So that's another good channel. And then there's your colleagues. Not technically considered community feedback, but these are industry professionals, right? So when you get a new APK to test it, or you have an open beta or something, I would highly recommend to send it out to your colleagues and get different opinions from people in marketing or artist team or something. You will quickly get to know the strengths and weaknesses of your game, right? And you have a super good overview. Just remember, this is submitted separately because we want organic player feedback to be organic player feedback. And here it's already goals and OKRs and everything involved. And then there's surveys. Surveys are a super good method to combine quality and quantity feedback. So you have some open questions and you have some checkbox or multiple choice questions. And then in the end, you have answers for specific questions. You're in control. You ask what you want to know. And you can present some shiny graphs, but also some fluent text to back that up. And yeah, that's the best part of feedback, really. There's also UX interviews. Now, community managers don't always do these, and we're not UX specialists by trade. There's also teams for UX, but we sometimes dip into that. I actually did one yesterday. It was very interesting. And this is cool because you take time, right? You take an hour or even an hour and a half for an interview, and you have the opportunity to pick someone by hand to represent a certain peer group and gain insights. So super cool, really. Of course, there are other channels depending on what game you're doing, what platforms you're using, the devices you support. And it's also part of our job to know these platforms, to inform yourself how they work, their functionality, and what sort of audience you can find there. Okay, now I want to get to something I called professionalizing feedback. I don't know if I invented that word. I hope not. However, there are a few steps between picking up a raw piece of feedback and actually reporting it to your development or your game team. It might seem straightforward that you just take it and send it over, but I want to explain in a bit of detail why it's not. So I picked an example material, and don't be afraid if you don't understand anything in the first moment, okay? That's how it's meant to be. I got this from a player on Discord once, right? The quote is, "What were the devs thinking about when they placed the settlements beyond the blockade? They're all level 3s from the blockade to the military center in the Forbidden Zone. We're only allowed to take 3 at a time max." Now, if you're sitting there and you don't know the game, you might be thinking, okay, I have no idea what's going on here, right? And you're not sure if you want to send this over right away. First of all, it says, what were the devs thinking about? These people are working hard, right? I don't want to send them something that says, what were you thinking about? But also, you don't know if the player is right or not. And maybe they're not. You send it over, the developer gets back to you and says, hey, I just spent 20 minutes checking this, and it's not even the case, right? So you need to apply a bit of magic here to transform this into a piece of constructive feedback that someone can work with. For that, you need product knowledge. You need to understand different types of players. You need an ability to sort of translate feedback, and you need to be able to effectively filter the priority. I will explain one by one. So product knowledge, right? Get the confusion done. So what is a settlement in this case? What is a blockade? What is level 3? Military center, Forbidden Zone. Who are we? And why are we only allowed to take 3 level 3 settlements at a time? And when you play and you gather product knowledge and you engage with the community, you find out a few things, right? Imagine a strategy game, a big map, pretty much like a board game, and territory levels are getting higher and higher, accumulating towards the center, and the group, the clan, the alliance that occupies the center wins the game in the end. Now, on the way to get there, you need to occupy patches of territory, get through the different zones, and there are blockades that separate the zones. To get from one zone to the next, you need a patch of territory that's next to the blockade, and you can only have a limited amount of territory from a certain level at a time. In this case, that means if you want to progress towards the center and win the game, but you have to give up patches of territory to acquire new ones, you might have to leave people behind who didn't go through the blockade in time. And that is super tedious because you want to win the game together, right? And only if you understood all this, you can start working with a piece of feedback. The next thing would be to understand what type of player are we dealing with. This is definitely a committed player, right? But they're also not speaking only for themselves. They're speaking for their whole group. They want to progress with their team. What is the sentiment? They feel frustrated. They're trying their best, but the game is literally stopping them from doing it. And what part of the player experience does the feedback refer to? In this case, it's, well, progressing, but it's also the social aspect. And then when you have figured these things out, the sentiment, the root problem, maybe even thought of a solution, how do you formulate this so that anyone in a potentially large team can understand it, even if they're involved in some completely different part of the game? And finally, how do you prioritize this? Does it affect only single players or does it affect all of them? In this case, it affects all of them. Is it a vital part of the game that's affected? Yeah, because it's the game's progression. Is it possibly even breaking the mechanics? I wouldn't say breaking, but it's definitely messing with them. And then when you have all this in mind, you will end up at something like this. You have an observation. Alliances have to conquer patches of territory between the blockade and the military center, and they're having trouble advancing. They can only occupy 3 level 3 at a time, and then they have to give one up, and you can't take everyone with you. The consequences, players get frustrated. They have to give up territories, they have to occupy new ones. Those who don't proceed beyond the blockade in time have no way of reaching new territory, and the gameplay gets super tedious like that. Maybe raise the number of settlements available, for example, to 5. Our devs read that, they implemented an alliance mission, players were able to unlock new patches of territory, everyone was happy, and then you communicate that back to the player base, then you pick up their reactions, positive reactions in this case, send these back to the developers, and that's the feedback loop that I was talking about in the beginning, right? So that's really the essence of a community manager's job, to build the bridge between players and developers. Now, to end this, I want to mention some of the major challenges, just so we can go into Q&A and you know a bit more about the job. So one thing for sure is communication. You have to get super efficient at it. Because in a small team, you might have the luxury of sitting right next to your developers. Great. Short communication cycle, perfect. The bigger the team, there might be a PM or a representative in between, or even two. You have a representative, and then the other team has one, and that's the way you communicate back and forth. So you need to develop very efficient communication skills. The same goes for discussion. As a CM, you're technically the player's advocate, right? You're the player's voice within a game team, and you're fighting for the players, while at the same time you're part of the game team and you want to achieve a common goal. So sometimes you have to get into discussions, professional ones, with various stakeholders inside the company. There's perception challenges. Sometimes players are just very loud about a problem that might not be that severe, while a lot of smaller groups are way more subtle about it and constructive about it. And you have to learn as a community manager that noise does not always mean numbers. And there's also filtering challenges. This slide is messy by choice, yeah. So sometimes you get hundreds of messages within a single day, and you have pings everywhere, right? Your Discord inbox is overflowing. So you also have to learn to filter out effectively what is important and what is not, and what you put in your report. I want to end here just for time's sake, so we can go on and jump into the Q&A. And I will also answer everything I can on Discord. And I want to thank you all very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Moritz. I have a question, just like a personal one. How did you end up working with the community? Everyone is talking about it, and of course, but just on the personal note, what's your story? How did you kind of came here?
Right. So I worked in digital marketing and social media marketing and community management for a bit in Germany. I'm from Germany. Then I moved to Barcelona to my girlfriend, and I was looking for a new job, and FunPlus was looking for a community manager, partly also for the German market. So a native level German speaker who has a passion for games, who has some experience in community management. And there I was, right place, right time.
Do you enjoy it more, like the social media marketing or the community management?
Community, I would say. It's more direct. It's engaging directly with players. That's what I really like, right? I think all of us gamers, we're a bit nerdy in that sense, and we like to interact with like-minded individuals. The social media part is also cool, but the community is my favorite. Yeah.
Cool, fantastic. Hey, I'm reminding everyone that you can post the questions from Moritz on Discord. Let's get some questions out. We still have a few minutes, so let me just, Moritz, check briefly. Yeah, you'll check. Oh my God, I mean, the chats are going a little bit. Yeah, we have so many people, so it's a little bit with everything. But if you have, Moritz, some time, can you please join us there on Discord? And
sure.
I'm reminding everyone to shoot the questions on Discord to continue, because I think on the chat we have we have a lot of people in there. I see a lot of people appreciate the talk. But for sure, if you can stay there with us a little bit on Discord, as we discussed, that would be fantastic.
I'll jump over there. Thank you very much, Oleg.
Oh, thank you very much, Moritz. Thank you.